All right, hello again, everybody. So you'll notice if you look at your assignments that we are moving on to Chapter 8 rather than finishing with we finished with Chapter 7. All that's left for us to do is the test. I'd like to give the process where I hand you guys back your graded work from the previous 2 weeks before you do the test. That way you have something else to study for to see if you got everything right. I know I didn't do very well with that last time, but I will do much better with that this time, I promise. But for now, for this week, so basically next week is when you will be doing the Chapter 7 test. Once again, it will only be on Chapter 7. This week, we are going to be talking about the initial concepts and stuff for Chapter 8. Now, Chapter 8, I think, at the very least, is a relatively easy chapter compared to previous chapters. And the reason for that is that no new concept really is introduced. So Chapter 7, we learned the last of the declension, or the cases, namely the dative case. So the dative case being the indirect object, you translate it using to or for in front of the word. So that's all that we have for cases. There are no more cases in Latin. Now, that does not mean that these are the only endings from now on that you ever have to memorize. Unfortunately, you will be having to memorize a lot more endings still, but you won't have to learn any new cases, which means that in terms of brand new concepts that aren't really like English, you won't have that much more that you need to expand your mind on, so to say. Instead, the new concept for this chapter is what's basically pronoun declensions. So pronouns are kind of an interestingly diverse but also very narrow type of word. More or less what they are is they're divided into basically 3 different or 4 different groups depending on how you count. On the one hand, you have what are called demonstrative pronouns, which are in English would be nouns like this or that. So you would say this TV or this table or this, I don't know, assignment, so to say, or that table, that TV, that assignment, so on and so forth. And the implication there is the reason for why they're called demonstrative is because they come from the Latin word demonstro, demonstrare, which means to point out, to point to or to point out, because they point to a specific thing rather than doing what we would consider a personal pronoun, which is is, ea, id, which is basically replace a noun. Now, we've gone over personal pronouns before, and if need be, you can scroll back through my channel. Although now that I think about it, I might need. Perhaps it would be best if I made some of these older videos public so that you guys have an easier time finding them. I think that's what I'll do. So I'll make some of these older videos public so that way you guys can just simply click on the channel and find them when you need to. So we've talked about personal pronouns before. Basically, personal pronouns in Latin function the same way as they do in English. You have a noun in the first sentence or the first part of a sentence, and you don't want to use that same noun again. So for instance, instead of saying, Julia went into the garden so that Julia could find some flowers, and when Julia picked the flowers, they made Julia happy, or something along those lines. Instead of having to say Julia all those times, you can replace Julia with she or her. Similarly, personal pronouns function the same way. Again, so is, ea, id are the personal pronouns. So what's being introduced are a set of about 3 different words. So you have hic, haec, hoc, ille, illa, illud, and qui, que, quod. Now, in case you're wondering why there are 3, just like with adjectives, you can have pronouns can be in either masculine, feminine, or neuter. And so this is just the respective masculine, feminine, and neuter, as you can see right here, for the nominative singular. So for the most part, especially with words like ille, illa, illud, and is, ea, id, pronouns are the pronoun endings. Those are the main things that you'll have to learn this chapter is the pronoun endings. They're fairly simple to understand. because as you can see, like eum, eo, eos, eis, eorum, earum, ea, eorum, eis. Well, id is just the neuter role of nominative and accusative are always the same applied. But a lot of these endings are more or less the same as you would see in a word like magnus, magnum, magnum. Same thing here. So you have illum, illo, illam, illa, illud, illo. Well, illud again, not neuter is weird. But illi, so you have the same e, orum, is, os, is, a, arum, is, as, is, a, orum, is, as, is. You have the same set of endings as you do for regular adjectives, more or less. The main difference between, say, at the very least, these two, the is, ea, id, and ille, illa, illud, is that the masculine and neuter singular nominative forms are a little weird, and the genitive singular and dative singular for all pronouns, including these other ones and any other pronoun in the Latin language, the genitive singular always ends in ius across all three genders. The genitive singular, so the second one down, first one to the left, it always ends in ius. You will never have a genitive singular which does not end in ius, and you can see that for a pronoun, that is. You can see that across all three genders with is, ea, id. You can see it with all three genders with hic, haec, hoc. You can see it with all three genders with qui, quae, quod. Now this isn't all pronouns, but what I mean by that is that I don't have all the pronouns in the Latin language on this piece of paper, but all pronouns in the Latin language and even certain adjectives will have ius as the ending for the genitive singular. For the dative singular, for almost every single pronoun, with the sole exception of hic, haec, hoc, the dative singular is the same across all three genders, and it ends in I. So it has this. So this would be pronounced ei, illi, qui. So on and so forth. Again, that is a rule for every single pronoun, with the exception of hic, haec, hoc. With hic, haec, hoc, the word is a little weird because of the fact that it has huic. Similarly, hic, haec, hoc is weird because of the fact that it has hunk, hank, hoc, and a whole bunch of different weird endings in the singular forms. However, even a weird one like hoc or hic, haec, hoc has more or less the same, has basically the same, the normal plural endings. So you have e, orum, is, os, is, a, arum, is, as, is. The only difference is that with the neuter plural copies the feminine singular. So instead of ha, as it would usually be for a neuter plural, so remember neuter plural nouns and adjectives and pronouns always end in a. This is one of the only exceptions to that rule. Instead, haec and haec are the nominative and accusative plural. So the other slightly weird one is qui, quae, quod. You can see once again, just a lot of things are a little weird here. So instead of having quum or quum or anything like that, you have quem. You do have quam, but then quod over here. And furthermore, you have, for the dative plural, you have this ibus ending. Now, ibus is a fairly standard ending for dative and ablative plural, but not in the two declensions that you're used to. You guys are only used to first and second declension, whereas this ending in particular comes from what is known as third declension, which we will learn in chapter 9. So just keep that in mind. So I would recommend remembering two different facts. IUS for genitive singular, all three genders, every single pronoun. I for dative singular for almost every single pronoun except for he, he, hoc. And for a lot of the qui, quae, quod endings, or a lot of the qui, quae, quo forms, for this, you're just going to have to really memorize these forms. But that should be everything. Hope you guys have a good time with the assignment.